Hello, WhatsOnStage Podcast listeners. It's Alex here with a bonus episode to see you into the weekend. If you're looking for the main episode of the podcast, we decided to wrongfoot listeners and put it out 2 days early, so we've had a bit of a switcheroo. My guest today is none other than two-time Olivier award-winning star Katie Brayben, who will return to the hit production of Girl from the North Country, playing at the Old Vic this summer. Written by Conor McPherson, with music and lyrics by Bob Dylan, the show was first seen at the Old Vic in 2017 and now returns to the same venue 8 years later, almost to the day. The show is set at a rundown guest house in Lake Superior in Duluth in the winter of 1934, while America is in the grip of the Great Depression. Honestly, such a pleasure to talk to you. I was so excited because I was obviously huge fan of Girl from the North Country. I think I've seen it like 3 times now. And at the same time, last time I spoke to you was at the Almeida press night for Tammy Faye, which then has obviously been a huge journey all of its own. But I'm going to start with Girl from the North Country. For you, what was the decision to come back? Why did you think I had to have another go at this beautiful material?
It was such a quick decision. It was like, yes. I mean, it's a wonderful show to be a part of. And I feel like, I literally said to my partner like 2 weeks before I got the call, I was like, I would do that show again. And then the call came, I was like, this is weird. Um, because generally, like, I kind of don't really believe in going back. I kind of think, you do it, it's for that time and that, moment in your life as well, and then you move on and you do new things. But I just knew there was more to mine for me and Elizabeth. And it's been 5 years. I had a kid. Like, I'm a different person, and I wanted to bring that, to the table.
That was going to be my next question in terms of, I think one of the beautiful joys of live theatre, unlike something like TV or film, is that you can revisit characters. It's not like you can go back on TV and be like, oh, I want to do that take again for the 20th anniversary special. But Elizabeth, this time, she's always been quite a cipher and an enigmatic character. Every time I've seen her played by different performers, she's felt like a different iteration of something. And how has that been for you now, sort of like simultaneously retreading steps, yet also finding new ones?
Well, I think what's great about this piece in general is that it can hold so many different performances across all the characters. You're never going to see the same show again because of that. Like, there's a lot of freedom, and um, I suppose more than freedom, there's a lot of respect for what each performer is bringing at the time. Um, which is so wonderful to see, blossoming in the rehearsal room and on stage. And I think that's what's great about this piece, is that it does allow for that. It allows for interpretation, and you know great respect to everyone who's done this show, because when I've seen it, it's been so different and so varied, and I just think that adds to the beauty of it.
And also something funny this time in terms of returning to its original home, the Old Vic, which you've never starred in it at, but sort of like is that quite funny, sort of like guiding it back to where it all began?
Yeah, it's lovely. It's lovely to do that. I mean, I saw it at the Old Vic 8 years ago. I think it was 8 years that it was on. So it's not quite done 10 years yet, but it is that sort of show that keeps, sort of like, when you think it's gone, it keeps coming back. And I feel like the creatives would say that as well. And that's sort of, it does have this magical it just has this magical power to it. And it's wonderful to, I mean, we were in the Old Vic a couple of days ago doing some voice work, and it's the most amazing space. Like, you can hear everything. It's like, the way it's built, it's just so perfect for sound. And I've seen musicals there, and I feel like it's just great for something like Girl from the North Country, in terms of the way there's not a bad seat in the house. Like, you really can get the full experience. Yeah, I mean, to me, he's kind of like he has the same sort of energy as Dylan for me. Like he's sort of, again, I'm going to use the word magical, but he is, and he, for example, what I love is, there are lots of secrets in the show. There's lots of like truths and untruths, and you're not really sure what's what, and and Connor being Connor doesn't give you a definitive answer, and that's wonderful and terrifying as an actor because you then have to sort of play a thing that you've kind of decided, or you can change your mind and decide something else on a different night. It's very open, and it creates a sort of mystery, I think, with the show where people come out and they're like, "Oh, was she and was he and did that happen?" And um I think that's wonderful. Like he doesn't deal in absolutes.
And for people who saw the show in the West End with you in it previously and now sort of see Katie Brayben back in Girl from the North Country, what do you think how do you think you're more likely to surprise them this time around with the way that you're taking Elizabeth, or is it sort of like more of the inflection or the what's going on underneath the bonnet, so to speak?
I don't think I'm in a position to say. I think that that's for other people to interpret. I feel as a person, I come to my work. I think every year I do this job, I come to my work in a deeper way. So I hope that that shows. But also, as I said to you, like every single person on that stage is extraordinary, and this show can hold many different iterations of these characters. And um, I just know that people are going to be blown away by this cast. They are honestly an extraordinary group of people, and also a very kind group of people, very supportive. It's very important in the room that you feel that you can fail, that you feel that you can go to places that are challenging and vulnerable. And this piece is very cathartic for people, and I think that feeling held in the room has been so wonderful.
It's, I think, one of the most interesting things as a performer to know how your performance would be informed by the people around you, as in just having those bodies on the stage with you and those like individuals making their choices inform the choices that you make. And I guess now with sort of like Tammy Faye, where you had two companies between the Almeida and Broadway, and again here, Girl from the North Country. Can you talk a bit about that in terms of that sort of like almost that unspoken link that happens between the different people that are on stage at any one time?
Yeah, I mean, I just think performers are extraordinary. I was saying the other day that like there's so much vulnerability and self-doubt that comes with our what we do, and then we go on and it's like no one would ever know. And I think I just have always respected performers, but even more so as I go through my career, respected um what what everyone brings and does. Yes, the Tammy Faye cast, the Almeida extraordinary. We had, the Almeida is like 3 dressing rooms, and you're all piled in, all giving each other God knows what colds and things. It's kind of it's a different, I would say it's a different ship to be on than a Broadway ship. You're on a little rickety boat at the Almeida, and you're on a slightly larger ship. But that's all there is there's no difference really. The work is the work. Um, uh, so there's no real difference essentially between the two.
You've It's been amazing looking back through your credits, especially over the last 10 years. You've got American Psycho, and then Beautiful, Tammy Faye, Girl from the North Country. The touch points in terms of big musicals that will go down as some of the biggest new musicals that have opened really this century. I think, not being too hyperbolic by saying that these are shows that start a conversation about what are new musicals in London, what are new musicals overseas. What do you get a kick out of doing those sorts of shows where you get to form something, or what is that sort of like experience like compared to a show where you might be taking over a role, or coming into something that's sort of like a pre-written text?
Well, I think it took me a long time to realize that the projects that are right for you will come to you because you are right for them. And it's like, it took me a long time. I was trying to fit myself into, you know, I wasn't really actually trying to fit myself into a mold, but you do these auditions as a young person, and nobody wants you, and then you realize, oh, maybe I'm supposed to start these things. Maybe I'm supposed to use my own voice and not try and be somebody else. I would always say, um, to anyone that I know that is starting out in the industry, like, your uniqueness is the thing in the end that people want. And it's hard to know that. And also, you don't know what your uniqueness is either. You don't know what it is you're bringing. Nobody knows that. That's why it's really hard. But yeah, I would say I'm much, of course, as a creative, I want to create things. Like, I don't want to slot into something somebody's done before. That doesn't interest me at all. Like, I couldn't be less interested in that. And that was the gift of Girl from the North Country. I mean, one, it breaks all the rules of musicals anyway, which was fantastic to be a part of. But also, there was an understanding that everyone was gonna do what they did, and not have to subscribe to something somebody else did.
Mm.
Essen
I think that's even true of, if you look back at something like Beautiful, it kind of told people that there was a certain way that the jukebox musical could be told that isn't necessarily the way that people might assume. And I think that that's sort of like quite useful to allow audiences that space to say, oh, we want to take a risk with you creatives. And is it nice to know that people will follow you in those, and people will follow you into new shows and new experiences that might not necessarily sound initially like something they're familiar with.
Well, yeah, that's great. I mean, I think, yes, more of that. It's interesting because it's always the sort of, things like, Operation Mincemeat. It's always things that start in these small venues, with a group of people who just want to do something their way. Because actually, to get stuff on, um, when you are being a little bit more creative and different, is just really hard right now. Like, it's very, very difficult to just suddenly go into a big venue. I think, with Girl from the North Country, they were lucky. Obviously, you had Bob Dylan, Conor McPherson. Um, yes, we can do it at the Old Vic. It's like you've got that. But for people creating work now, like, it's really tough. It's really tough. And um, to be a bit of a pioneer, to be a bit different, to kind of push the boundaries of what we know, and for people to trust that. Which is what you're saying, really, isn't it? It's like, how do we trust that we're gonna come and have a meaningful experience at the theatre? Um, and the truth is, you'll never know, but you've got to take that risk
What
as an audience member.
what shows have you taken risks on going to see recently that you feel like have really paid off for you?
Well, I mean, I didn't take a risk really, but I went to see The Years, which was very profound for me. Um, and then at the same theatre last night, I saw Giant, which was very profound and prescient for different reasons. So the Harold Pinter,
Yeah.
that's been
Save you a
great.
seat every show. Yeah.
Yeah, they'd already transferred by the time I'd seen them. But I saw O'Mary when I was in New York. I mean, I imagine that's gonna come here at some point. Yeah, and so yeah, I mean, I'm honestly, I'm open to any new experience at the theatre. I'm really open to whatever anyone's bringing at the moment, because what we can't do is sort of just become this sort of homogenized. Like, I think the difficulty is because, it's a big gamble putting on a show. I'm not a producer. I can't imagine what that's like. But I think what happens is we go, well, we need to do this again because it worked, rather than going, okay, well, what can we do that's really, you know, actually saying something, or going to move people in a different way. I mean, even saying that is ridiculous because it's too thought about. It's like, but to keep those creative minds ticking, and to keep food on their plate. That's the important thing at the moment, to keep them so that they can go off and write and do these amazing things for us.
I feel you're tapping into both with Girl from the North Country, but also just in terms of experience, or like what's great about the theatre ecosystem is that joyful unpredictability of not knowing what's going to emerge when you put a group of people in a room together and ask them to create something. Um, and I do agree. I think that Girl from the North Country in particular, like you say, it every single time that you put a different group of configuration of people into that space, it's almost like Shakespeare in the way that they read into these characters and pull something else out, or different lines stand out. Um, are there lines this time around that have stood out that didn't stand out last time for you, that suddenly you've sort of like invested more in, or found something else to sort of like mine when you're sort of like going through it?
Storm's coming. That's the one that keeps coming out to me. Big storms coming here, everywhere, Europe. Yeah. Um, it's quite sort of, I get goosebumps when I'm doing the show, and for me, playing Elizabeth, what's sort of incredible about it for me is that it's sort of like a radio play. I'm sort of there tuned in, but also tuned out. Um, and so it's, yeah, I mean, everything, things hit me on different performances, and at different times in the rehearsal room, and also different songs. I mean, we haven't even talked about Bob Dylan yet, but like, uh, uh, extraordinary. Yeah, they broke every rule with this. I wouldn't even call it a musical. I don't know what you would call it, but um, that these characters, they have these such hard lives, and they're going through so much. It's a depression. Um, Everything's sort of falling apart around them. They're trying to hide it all from everyone in that sort of 1930s way. Um, but Elizabeth can see through all of that. And she also does, like, as you were saying, like Shakespeare, she's like the fool, she says the unsaid. She hears things in a completely different way from everybody else, because everyone else is putting on a front, it's trying to get by, it's trying to survive, honestly. And these songs have the ability to express the inexpressible. It's like they are able to dip into this sort of humanity. um I mean, Connor calls it the honey to the vinegar, it's, and that's just no better way of saying it than that. Um, yeah, and it spans across time. You've got these. It's 1934, but you've got these lyrics from like the 60s and 70s, and then you've got these performers from now, and it's like all of that stuff is in there. It's all makes part of the picture.
It was funny watching the Bob Dylan biopic, Complete Unknown, sort of hearing sort of almost like the Dylan intention behind these songs, because one of the most impressive things about the show is the way that it simultaneously honors what Dylan was trying to do, yet because of the way that all the numbers are reorchestrated and rearranged, pushes them into almost like a more timeless bracket where they suddenly mean 50 other things at the same time.
Yeah, and I think they mean to you what they mean to you. I mean, Dylan is, he's very sort of enigmatic, isn't he, and sort of oblique about things. He doesn't say anything's definitely this or definitely that. Same as Connor, and what that does for you as a performer is you go, I start Rolling Stone. I don't know what's going to happen, man. I don't know what's going to happen. Whatever happens, happens in front of these people that are gathered here today. Like, that's amazing for me. Like, I don't have to be anything, you know. I don't have to, as Elizabeth, I don't have to subscribe to anything, be anything. I can just let it happen and let go. I think there's a letting go as well that happens, which is so amazing. And, we're obviously in a world where everything's recorded and blah, blah, and, with someone can comment on it immediately and saying, I don't like that or whatever. And it's just amazing to be in a room with people and you're like, this is it in this moment. Um, and there's something anarchic about that, which I love.
Yeah, no, that's definitely the case. I think, for example, the number of times now that, say, I don't know, a West End star goes into a production like Moulin Rouge, and within 2 days of that, there's about 50 different recordings of their performance of the 11 o'clock number sort of being scrutinized on social media. And it adds this whole other pressure, but also then almost like locks down a performer so that their 2 hours worth of offering is boiled down to 20 seconds worth of examination of a riff or something on TikTok.
As I was saying to you before, we come with our own self-loathing. We don't need you to give it to us as well. Like, it's like it's sort of bonkers to me that that's how we investigate art now, as we go, oh, I didn't like that. It's like, of course you can have your opinion like in your kitchen when you go home. Why are we just so horrible? I don't understand. We've become a bit horrible, and what it does to an artist is shut you down. It makes you feel like you cannot express or fail actually, and you know because it took me a long time to realize that singing, certainly anyway, singing for me has to be about, in some form, joy. And that's whether or not the character is going through something horrific. The expression through the voice, for me, has to have joy in it. And unfortunately, I think for a lot of young people as well, like that, yeah, that's going to shut them down.
Yeah.
It's only going to shut you down.
I think it's a pressure now as well for people to have to think, okay, what are my Instagram followers counts looking like, or stuff like that, all that sort of side of the industry, that it feels like theatre is marketing as opposed to theatre is creating to some extent.
Definitely. And, obviously, I know we've got to sell the show and, bums on seats and all that. That's important. But when that's down to the artist, I think that's a tall order. That's a lot to ask. We've got to work hand in hand with marketing. Very important part of the job, but also acknowledge that it's not what it is. When we're watching these videos, that's not the whole point. Is that it's live. The whole point is that it's going to surprise you. It's going to change. It's going to be what it is on that day. And we've got to be allowed, I think that's part of the beauty of it. Like, not that we should be allowed to have that relationship, that it is part of what is great about it. As soon as we put something online, it's like the magic's kind of gone, the surprise, the intimacy, like, yeah, I mean, I guess I'm old-fashioned in that way, I don't know.
No, I think that's that is the most fundamentally magical thing about live theatre, is that when I see you on opening night, it will be very different to when I see you on closing night, and those 2 months will inform your experience and go from the North Country, to the point that Katie Brayben at the start of the run wouldn't not be the Katie Brayben at the end of the run. And
yeah, I'll be exhausted. No, but like, in all seriousness, like, we're also, we deal with hay fever, we deal with colds, we deal with that, and we go on because we love our jobs, and we want to do that, and we sing with the voices we have today. It's like that's how we roll. It's like 8 shows a week. We don't do one a week. We don't do one a fortnight. We do 8 shows a week. That's that's part of it. It's grueling.
It was so fascinating how far Elizabeth sits compared to Tammy Faye, in that Tammy Faye is the epitome of empathy in ways that become almost caustic to some extent, but like whereas Elizabeth is almost like the complete polar opposite in every conceivable way. That must be really, maybe not every single way, but most ways that I can imagine. That must be quite exciting for you to sort of like flex completely different muscles.
I hadn't really thought about it, I suppose, because I just approach whoever they are. I don't think, oh, this is different from the last person. But yeah, thinking about, so that's my son shouting, "Mummy." Thinking about it, yeah, I mean, it's part of what is so brilliant about our jobs, is that we get to, I always think there is a part of you in every character. So it's about going, okay, what are the similarities? What are the things that, that chime with me and this character? And it was fantastic to play Tammy, because she was so up and bubbly, and like she cared so deeply about people. to her detriment sometimes. But she really, really did, and it was wonderful to play that. But just as much, it's wonderful to play Elizabeth, who I don't think is uncaring at all. I think she deeply feels things, but she just doesn't have the filter that everybody else has. She doesn't need to. She doesn't need to show face. She doesn't need to. Shouldn't have that ability anymore. Uh, to have the pretense um, when things aren't great, or she can. Well, as you see, she says, "I can see a louse. I can see them." She knows she can see the good ones and she sees the bad ones. Um, yeah, so it's amazing to get to step into the lives of these very different people all the time.
It's felt like a year in which there's been huge traffic of shows from London to New York in terms of Hills of California, Tammy Faye, Sunset Boulevard, Operation Mincemeat, Stranger Things, just the ones I can remember off the top of my head. It must have been quite nice to be part of that sort of like that community, I guess, last autumn of sort of like Brits on Broadway kind of energy all at the same time.
Yeah. Yeah, it was nice. I mean, we're not so different, Brits and the Americans. We want to make great theatre. We care very, very deeply about that, and it was wonderful to see British shows doing so well, for sure. Yeah, I mean, I saw Operation Mincemeat over here. I was gone by the time they went over, but I love their story. Like, I love their narrative. They started the New Diorama, which I've seen some shows there, and it's such a small little venue, like tucked away Warren Street, and it's just wonderful. I'm so pleased for them that's their trajectory, because it is a big gamble putting on a show on Broadway. It's the big difference between West End and Broadway is just the amount of money involved. Honestly, it's such a bigger gamble.
Yeah, we had Sonia Freeman on the podcast a few weeks ago saying shows don't have the same time that they would in the West End to sort of find an audience because from the moment those grosses come out in the first preview week, it's like, right, this is a hit, this isn't a hit, and then the chance to change that narrative just takes so much longer to actually it's almost impossible sometimes. But at the same time, it like audiences will, as we see in the West End with shows like The Years, it takes time for audiences to come around and say, oh, this sounds interesting, I'll find a date that I can go and see it, by which point
I mean, that show was so challenging. Like, what I loved about it is, like, it was so challenging, and yet people met the challenge of it and went, "Yeah, I need this, and I need this experience." And then, to have it transfer was very edifying for me. I just thought, well, this is brilliant. Like, people do want to see these kind of shows. They do want to have those kind of experiences. And that's why places like the Almeida and, Royal Court are so important to our West End because, you got to start somewhere where you, as I was saying before, where you can fail, where you can push the boundary, where you can like make some crazy choices, and those are those venues. And then, if you're lucky, you get a transfer, but you don't just get to plonk yourself in a West End venue. Sadly, like, you have to have that traction behind you.
I guess if you're returning to Girl from the North Country, would you ever be tempted to go back to something like Tammy Faye or American Psycho? I see that Rupert's now announced that. Okay.
I think I'm a little old for American Psycho now. I mean, I loved that show. It was fantastic, and we had an unbelievable cast, and we're all very proud of each other. In the last sort of 10 years or whatever everyone's been doing. Um, It was a great moment for me, American Psycho, 'cause it's when I met Rupert and my relationship with the Almeida started. That was huge for me in my career and for my, growing as a person and as an artist. And yeah. What was the question?
Whether or not, like, are there any other roles you'd be tempted to go back to, I guess, beyond, or even like Tammy Faye, like if that came back up as well, fingers crossed, crying for it in London.
Yeah, I mean, I think the British audiences really got it. So yeah, you never know. You do never know.
It's me pining away in my shed here, just hoping with hope. There's that sadness sometimes that theatre can be so temporary that shows can only last a limited time and then they're taken away for whatever reason. Maybe that's also the beauty of it, in the same way that the lack of permanence, like unless it's a Les Mis or a Phantom, we all have to move on and sort of like collectively get over something.
Yeah, I think that's part of the transient nature of it. I think, every time, life is about letting go, isn't it? And I think every time, not to get too freaking deep, but like, it is. I love I know. I always see this interviews and I'm like, "Why are you so earnest, Katie? Just have a laugh." Um, so yeah, no, I do think it's about letting go, and so, you know, it is, my our whole career is a sort of series of letting stuff go and letting it be in the moment and then letting it go, and, that's a lovely thing, really. Sometimes you're cut short at the point where you're not quite, Tammy Faye and Broadway, um we would have liked to have done longer. We were pumped and ready to do longer, so that, some are harder to let go of than others. But yeah, I think that's part of it, you know?
Mm. Wonderful. Well, I feel like on that note, that's a very
Mhm.
sanguine moment at which to come to a conclusion. And thank you so much for sitting down. I cannot wait to see you at the Old Vic. Is your first show at the Old Vic, or have
Yeah,
you done a show there
no, I've
before?
not done a show there. No,
Oh
we're going with
wow!
tech today, so yeah, I'm gonna see what it's like backstage.
Thank you, Katie. And yeah, hope all goes well in previews, and I'll be cheering along on opening night at the Old Vic.
Amazing, I'll see you then.
Thank you for listening to this episode of the What's on Stage podcast. Make sure you like, follow, subscribe, leave a comment, rate, and all round rave about the podcast wherever you can. We'll be back with regular episodes every Friday and a smattering of bonus episodes in between.